Alright, let's go through this Exosister deck profile. So first, I'm going to start with the Exosister monsters specifically, and then we'll get into the other cards in the deck. So first off, Exosister Martha. She is phenomenal, probably the best card in the deck, and that's why I run her at 3. Her effects are, if you control no monsters or only XYZ monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do so, special summon one Exosister Elise from your deck. And you cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate this effect, except Exosister monsters. So if you were thinking about special summoning your Karibo from graveyard, well, you might want to reconsider it. Next, if a card or cards is moved out of either graveyard except during the damage step, you can special summon one of your Exosister monsters from your extra deck. Now, the thing that's different about Martha compared to the other Exosister monsters is you can also trigger this effect. With the other Exosisters, your opponent has to trigger that effect by moving something from either graveyard. So really useful, and I do have some cards in here to help that effect get triggered, so we'll get into those a bit later on. Now on to the next Exosister. Next, Exosister Elise. I run her at 3, mostly because her effect is really good. So you can special summon her from your hand if you have another Exosister monster on your field. And then of course you gain 800 life points if Stella is on the field when you resolve that effect. Speaking of Stella, her effect is you can special summon one Exosister monster from your hand, and if you control Elise while that happens, you gain 800 life points. So I run her at 3, really good card. Let's jump over to another one. So over here we've got Exosister Sophia. Now I run Exosister Sophia at 3 because of her effect to draw a card while you have an Exosister monster on the field. So really useful. That can come in handy for times where maybe you're a little bit low on resources. Then finally we have Exosister Irene. She's not really the most utilized out of the Exosisters when it comes to me playing this deck. I usually just have her there as a name so I can get more Exosisters onto the field, or if I want to use Exosister Vadis, which I'll explain about in a little bit. But her effect is you can place one Exosister card from your hand on the bottom of the deck and draw one card. As opposed to Sophia's, you just draw a card if you have an Exosister monster on the field. So I only run her at 2. Alright, next, let's get into some of the Exosister spells and traps. Exosister Pax. Best spell in the Exosister archetype. Now I run this card at 3. Let's take a look at this effect here. So during the main phase, pay 800 life points and add one Exosister card from your deck to your hand, except Pax. Then, if you added a monster by this effect, you can special summon it if the other Exosister monster mentioned on it is on your field or in your graveyard. And so to kind of explain that effect there, so all of the Exosisters have another Exosister mentioned on them. For the case of Ellis and Stella, Ellis has Stella in her text, and Stella has Ellis in her text. So if either of those have their counterpart on the field or graveyard, you can special summon them. You can special summon the one you added from your deck to your hand to the field. Next, we got Exosister Vadis. This one's really good. You can pay 800 life points, and then you can special summon 2 Exosister monsters from your deck. But first, you have to target one of them, and then you can special summon the one that is mentioned on that card. So if you choose Elise, you can special summon Stella. If you get Irene, you can get Sophia. If you get Martha, you can get Elise. So that's how that works. So I run this at 2 because it's a really good card to have. Most cases I'm not gonna need it, mostly because of how the other Exosisters function. I can kind of just get my cards onto the field and everything's good to go. Alright, the next Exosister trap is Exosister Returnia. So if all the monsters you control are Exosister monsters, you can pay 800 life points and target one card your opponent controls or in their graveyard and banish it. Then you can apply one of the following effects. First one is immediately after this effect resolves, XYZ summon an Exosister XYZ monster using monsters you control. Then the other one, which I love to use, is if you already XYZ summon this turn, you can banish one card your opponent controls. And so this card allows you to do a lot of banishing in one turn if you play your cards right. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I run Exosister Returnia at 2 because it is a really good card. Alright, so that's going to take us through all of the Exosister monsters, spells, and traps. So let's get into the rest of the deck here. Secret Village of the Spellcasters. I use this because the main deck Exosister cards are, or rather the main deck Exosister monsters are spellcasters. So if I have them on field, well, my opponent can't activate spell cards, which is really fun sometimes. And I've actually had people surrender immediately because they couldn't do anything. So very great card to run in here, only running it at 2. Then we've got Pot of Prosperity, running this at 1 because the game only lets me have 1. Nah. And so I'm gonna, I have a few cards in my extra deck that, mostly just 3, I don't really go for the 6. I would banish 3 and then I could just take a look at whatever I have on my deck and see if I need some of those cards. Sometimes I need to, maybe search for a Pax or hope for a Pax or hope for a Martha or something that's gonna be useful for that turn. Then we've got Dark Ruler No More, running this at 2 because there's going to be times where you might end up going second, or maybe your board gets broken a little bit and you need to be able to bounce back. So Dark Ruler No More is going to help you with that at least a little bit, so highly recommend running this in your main deck. Then we've got Terraforming. We're going to go searching for that secret village. Then we have Harpy's Feather Duster. Reason I'm running this is because I don't have Lightning Storm, so yeah. Still comes in handy though. Then we've got Infinite Impermanence, running it at 1. Yeah, it's a card. It works. It does things. Then over here we got Called by the Grave, only running this at 1 because I'm not trying to really bog down my deck with too many spells and traps. So really useful card, of course, for stopping certain card effects, as you already know, and then also for triggering Exosister Martha's effect if I feel like it. Then the other Exosister card I completely forgot to mention was Exosister Carpe Diem. I only run this at 1, mostly because I can easily search it if I absolutely need it. Most cases I don't, but its effects are pretty dang useful, especially the one where I can turn it into a prohibition essentially and prevent, essentially negate the effects of a particular card. So if I know I'm going to be searching for cards and I really need to get that next card I'm searching for, I might XYZ summon, and now this is how this effect activates. You XYZ summon an Exosister monster, this card activates, and then you can declare one card name and negate its effects until the end of the turn. So if I want to go searching, I declare Ash Blossom, I'm good to go. If I don't want to get, interrupted while I'm special summoning a whole bunch of cards, which is one of the things that the Exosisters do very well, I would call Nibiru. So it just depends on the situation that you're in. It's really useful for that. Now, the other part of the effect is when an Exosister monster battles, you can destroy one spell or trap card your opponent controls, and you can only do that once per turn. So if you're getting attacked or if you're attacking, it can really be a good way to, get rid of some back row. Okay, so let's get into the monsters, the other monsters in the deck. All right, so we've got Dogmatica Fleur-de-Lis, and she is in the deck because she's a spellcaster, and she's a really good way of getting a spellcaster onto the field if I have Secret Village. Now, the way I would get her onto the field is through her quick effect, that if there is an extra deck monster on the field, you can special summon her from hand. And then she also has another effect where she gains 500 attack when a Dogmatica monster declares an attack. That's cool and all, but the main effect is just so I can get a spellcaster onto the field. Now, I would always recommend doing this on your opponent's turn. Never do it on your own turn, because if, for example, you draw into a Martha or you want to use Martha's effect, this is going to prevent you from doing that. Keep that in mind. All right, Dimension Shifter. Running this at 2 because the game says I can only run 2. And reason I'm using this also is because the Exosisters don't really care about the graveyard. They're not moving things from the graveyard or anything like that. The only card this would potentially invalidate is Exosister packs with the whole special summoning mechanic. But other than that, works very well at invalidating a lot of decks that I face. So definitely running this at 2. All right, so DD Crow, I'm running this at 2. And its effect is a quick effect, and you can discard it to the graveyard to target one card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it. Really good for doing some interruptions and also triggering Exosister Martha's effect. Next, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. I am not really going to explain this one. If you've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for the past few years, you know why this is in here. So I run her at 2, that's that. Now here's one that I'm sure you guys were not expecting to see in here, and you were probably questioning it when you first started watching this video. But yes, Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill is in the deck. I run it at 2, and its effect is really, really nice. If your opponent special summons a monster or monsters face up, except during the damage step, you can discard this card, then target one of those face up monsters, negate its effects until the end of this turn. And also, if that face-up monster leaves the field this turn, its controller takes damage equal to its original attack. So, this card is, in my opinion, the better version of Effect Veiler. Mostly because you can use this card anywhere. You don't have to be relegated to just the main phase. Of course, you can't do it during the damage step, but you can do it pretty much everywhere else. So it's really good for that, but then also you have the effect of burning your opponent for the original attack of the monster that's removed from the field. Now you might be thinking, that's kind of situational. Why would I even use that? Why would you use that? And here's the thing. In the Exosister deck, you have a lot of opportunities to banish cards. You have Exosister Returnia, which just lets you target and banish something if you control Exosister monsters. You also have Exosister Michaelis. The turn she's XYZ summoned, you can banish something. Magnifica, non-target banish. You have a lot of ways to get cards off of your opponent's field. Now, if they go into like this really big monster, like 3000 attack with some super scary effect that you don't want to have to deal with, you use Ghost Mourner, negate their effect, and then you have maybe Michaelis that was special summoned that turn. You banish it, they lose 3,000 life points, and you're sitting pretty for the most part. So really useful card in this deck. I do like it. And yeah, so that's going to be the main deck. So let's jump over to the extra deck. Okay, so first we got Bagooska. So Bagooska, of course, good for stalling out and just trying to build up resources until you can actually maybe even just play the game. Maybe you got a really bad hand and you're waiting it out. Or you need to wait out your opponent because they've built themselves up in a way where you currently can't handle them. So those extra resources you get are gonna help out at the end of it. So one Bagooska because it's fun. Then we've got Time Thief Redoer. Really nice effect where you can take cards from your opponent's deck and use them as XYZ material. But here's the thing, I don't really use this card that much. It's mostly fodder for Pot of Prosperity. But if I ever do need to use it, it's here, Then let's get over to Exosister Michaelis. So really, really fun card. I run her at 3, and she can't be destroyed by battle with a monster special summon from the graveyard. An effect that rarely comes up, but hey, it's there. Now, her main effect is the turn she's XYZ summoned, you can banish one card your opponent controls or in their graveyard. And so that's a really useful effect. You can do that on your opponent's turn, your turn, just the turn that she's XYZ summoned. Then her other effect is you can detach one material from this card and search for an Exosister spell or trap from your deck and just add it to your hand. So running her at 3. Then we've got Exosister Caspatel. Same thing as Michaelis can't be destroyed by battle from monster special summon from the graveyard. And her main effect when she's XYZ summoned is neither player can special summon monsters from the graveyard. Then her detach effect is you can search for an Exosister monster and add it to your hand. So you can search one out from your deck specifically. So I only run her at 2 because she does come in handy, but I'm not going to be going into her most times. It's mostly going to be Michaelis that I'll be utilizing. Then we've got Exosister Jabreen. So she can't be destroyed by the activated effects of monsters special summoned from the graveyard. And same thing goes for another Exosister XYZ, Exosister Asophiel. We'll be taking a look at her in a little bit. Now, the other effect is the turn she's XYZ summoned, you can target one monster your opponent controls. This is a quick effect, and negate its effects. So it's a really good way to respond to maybe some sort of detrimental effect that could happen to you. Then her other effect is you can detach one material, and all of your XYZ monsters you control for the rest of the turn gain 800 attack. So that means any Exosisters currently on your field, or rather any XYZ monsters currently on your field, as well as any XYZs you bring to the field after this effect is activated. And yeah, so I only run her at 2. Now, Exosister Asophiel. Her thing is, the turn she's XYZ summoned, no graveyard effects. Neither player can activate graveyard effects. Then her detach effect is, you can target one monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So I'm not utilizing Asophiel all that much, but she is useful against decks that really need graveyard effects. So she comes in handy sometimes. Then, finally, we've got Exosisters Magnifica, the big boss monster of your extra deck. So she requires 2 rank 4 Exosister monsters to special summon her, so you're going to overlay those. Her main effect is you can detach one material from the card and banish one card your opponent controls. This is a non-targeting banish, so your opponent has to respond right as you activate that effect. Then also, she can attack twice per battle phase. And then her other effect is when your opponent activates a card effect, quick effect, you can return one XYZ monster you own attached to this card to your extra deck. Then you can special summon that monster from your extra deck by using this card you control as material. And it is considered an XYZ summon field. Now this is where I'm going to explain the part of how you can banish up to 4 cards in one turn. So you've got your Returnia set, right? You've got Magnifica on field with Caspitel and Michaelis as material. Your opponent does something, like maybe they normal summon a monster, and you're like, I don't want that on the field. Let me banish that. So you detach Caspitel, you banish that card, cool, right? Then they're like, oh, well, I'm gonna retaliate with something else. They maybe activate a spell card to special summon something, and you're like, okay, Magnifica effect, I'm gonna return Michaelis to the extra deck and then XYZ summon her. So now you have Michaelis with an active banish effect ready to go. And then you've also been able to trigger the effect for Returnia when you do actually activate it. So now you have 3 more banishes ready to go. So they maybe special summon something, right? Then Michaelis banishes that. Then they're like, okay, well, I can't really do anything. Let me set these 2 cards. They set 2 cards, end phase, you activate Returnia, banish one, then immediately after that, banish the other one. So right there, 4 banishes in one turn. So Magnifica, super powerful, especially in tandem with your Exosister Returnia. Then let's move on to the other cards in here. So I only run Exosisters Magnifica at 2. Then we have Zeus. I'm not explaining why I have Zeus. Zeus is here. And then finally we have Lina, the Light Charmer. So really fun card for just, maybe getting something out of your opponent's graveyard if you need to. But I don't really use her. Again, fodder for the prosperity. And so there you go. If you want to see how this deck runs, check out the video on screen right now. I will catch you guys later.